flat perspective. Like I don't really need to work out where the vanishing points are going over there. For the middle ground element, yes, I needed that because I wanted to create this grid of tiles and stuff like that, so you know, like if you're treating you distant. The main character, which is the kid, but again, this is all flat elements, kind of like you don't want to make it completely flat because like you want to create that sensation of depth, but it's not anything that you can't do. But you know, almost isometric projections or just like twisting the cube. That's it. Basically, you see two sides of it, and that's it. Two straight lines. And again, the whole composition works to frame our main character. Even though this is our big character, you know exactly who the important character or who the main character is right here. It's being framed by everything. It's even kind of like being pointed by this guy. Like his hand is actually pointing you to where the main character is, where the central, the focus of attention has to go. Let's get another. Okay, this is where I have fun. In the sense of, I love when I get to do stories or pages or illustrations where the environment or the story allows me to not necessarily be as technical with like its built-ins or is like, you know, like high-tech sci-fi kind of ships and stuff like that, that all of those are straight lines, and I have more fun when I can actually bend a little bit of everything. So in these two panels, basically, even though this is two elements, you kind of sense the depth of the composition. Also, it allows you to frame. Like, a big thing is that you want to tell the reader where they should look. You need to tell them, and later on I'm going to go into like how all of those principles I apply to actual pages and actual storytelling. So, because we'll talk about it later. But anyway, so by creating this different planes, you have that sense of that. And this one, basically, the background element is nothing. It's just a few fishes just swimming or something. So, and then you get to the next panel where I inverted everything, and then you have again your big foreground element. Middle ground basically becomes this, which is really far away in the background, and then the background is again just plain. This is an underwater story, so I had fun with actually landscape and all that because again it's the bottom of the sea, and there's not a lot of buildings over there. Just maybe this tiny temple, but again, there was no grid here. There was just a drawing of the foreground element, a drawing of the middle ground element, and almost anything in the background element. But still, you sense that depth just because of the composition. Another thing that I should mention is when you're trying to compose your panels through planes, try to have a little bit of overlapping, because that's what's going to give you. If you don't go with like the whole line weight situation, which I mean you should, but there are some like depending on your style, you can go with just dead lines, and that can still work. You can even do it in colors if you wanted to, how to separate those planes. But have a little bit of overlapping that shows you which plane is actually in front, which one is back, and then so forward. Like here, even though it's minimal, you see that this is actually overlapping the next plane. Like you see that this is actually going in front of them. So that way I know. That way you know. Even though if I remove all the line weight and I just go with that with a dead line, you still know that this element is being it's hiding a part of this one. That way you also create that sense of depth. Again, here the character is still overlapping that middle ground element, allows you to know which one is in front of one. This is the next panel out of the previous two. What you can also do, and what I did here, is because we're talking about comics, we're talking about a specific medium. Panels, have fun with them. I basically threw that panel of the main character because I wanted to show kind of like everything that was surrounding the character at that moment. I had my foreground element, my middle ground element, my background but I wanted to know what the character was thinking, so I bring that really close to the reader. Again, I just use this panel, I overlap the foreground element with this panel, and this oddly shaped panel, or dynamic shaped panel, whatever you want to call it, and just smack down the face of the character and what he's thinking of, what he's looking at, which is basically where that anchor is from. You can also have fun that way. You can also create that sensation of depth with your panel layout. And yeah, that's basically what I did there with that panel overlapping basically everything. Now you're gonna laugh about this next picture, but we're gonna start talking about foreshortening. Yeah, if I show the next picture, it's even better. What are you doing? What are you doing to me? There we go. That's Justin Bieber, by the way. I like this picture. Basically, the principle of foreshortening is basically is this hand. It's still him. It's still the same character, but you can see that this hand is coming closer to us. Sadly, this picture, like this, was all blurred and stuff. But basically, you have all the elements you need here to kind of project that sense of foreshortening with the character, which makes him feel closer to you. Again, this is a picture, and depending on your style, you can be more cartoony, you can be more realistic. But this is an effect that you want to have if you're drawing more dynamic scenes or more dynamic situations, or just want to, play with the reader a little bit. Anyway, okay, let's continue. Get rid of this. Why are you hating me? Anyway, here we go. This is another panel. As you see, this basically, and this is what I do, because like when we talk about foreshortening, yes, you can do the whole foreshortening with, again, trying to figure out kind of like the depth, kind of like the hand, but then it can really look, it can look really flat depending on how you do it. It can look like you just drew a big hand in front of a tiny dude or something like that. So you want to create that sensation of like everything is connected, everything is kind of coming towards you in the camera. What I do, and again, this is going back to planes, but kind of even breaking a single figure into planes again, kind of. And that's what I use to kind of wrap my head around the idea of foreshortening. For this scene of this woman falling, okay, so I want to create the sense that she's basically falling to her death, she's falling to her doom. So what I did was, again, a giant foreground element. But the thing is that this element is actually connected to your middle ground element, and then your background element, which was basically that hand. But the thing is, all of this is the same figure. So you want to create that sense of planes without necessarily breaking it too much. But again, that's how it works. Maybe my head is kind of messy, so that's how kind of I figure out foreshortening. And I just draw the bottom of the bottom of the boot here, and then I see, okay, so what would be my next plane? If I'm doing the hand, or in this case, the leg and the feet. The feet, then you have the gaps, and then you have the thigh. So basically, again, I just broke it into planes. I figure out that this is all connected, but I still think of it of just planes: foreground, middle ground, background. Then again, this is the knee of the other leg coming towards us. So the knee is hiding the thigh. So you kind of want to show the thigh because you want to know that this is all part of the same figure, but this is again one plane from another plane. Simple as that. So then the torso. The torso is basically flat. At this point, I'm not even thinking about, foreshortening. The torso is basically, I'm drawing the torso how I would draw a torso normally, like just looking straight at someone. So, but by thinking of planes and the overlapping and all that, then this torso is actually retreating in the distance compared to this leg or compared to this leg. And then this hand, which was like in this composition what's actually farther away from the camera, is actually just, again, a hand, a normal hand. Maybe the hand a little bit smaller, so you feel like this in proportion to the torso, so you know that this is actually retreating the distance. But again, if you see at the other hand, you see that again the hand is almost the size of almost as big as the head, even bigger, the hand. Then you have the forearm, kind of another section, another plane, the bicep and all this, another plane, and then that's connected to the torso, which is another plane. And if you think this in the sense of like, shapes and cylinders and cubes and volumes and stuff like that, those are just like, you can pretty much just draw cylinders overlapping each other, and then every plane becomes its own, but it's connected, creating the illusion of foreshortening. After this, we're going to have questions, because I know this is kind of weird, but again, it's how I found out. I think the whole idea of foreshortening is easy to comprehend, and it doesn't create, because when I talk to other artists about this, and they talk about doing foreshortening and drawing foreshortening, they're like, how do I do this? Like, it's not just a big hand compared to a tiny body. It's about creating that illusion, and it all comes down to planes again, and it all comes down to breaking the figure into plane. Again, for this example, the sword, yes, it's retreating in distance, but it's again your foreground element, but it's connected to the hand. But it's also retreating. Of course, he has like a huge bicep and deltoid, so that doesn't look like he's retreating, but never mind, it is. But then this arm basically becomes its own element. You have one plane, you have another plane, then the head is another plane right next to it. You can draw it separately. It's pretty much a straightforward head, but it's connected to all this figure that is just a series of planes again. So again, sword, arm, head, torso, or shoulders, other hand, a leg. That just by overlapping all this object, all these planes, overlapping all these parts of this figure, I create the sensation of foreshortening. With that flash illustration, again, a hand connected to a forearm. This is basically straight. Like this could be, like I can remove flash and you think this is just a hand, like this, doing nothing. But by overlapping the rest of the body, then you have the deltoid behind the head. Then you have two planes. The head is almost in the same plane as a deltoid. That's another plane. The torso is basically straightforward. It's another plane, a third plane. Then the legs, this one's coming towards us, so I make it a little bit bigger than it should, but it's because it's coming towards us in space. This one, a little bit shorter, it's going back, it's overlapping the feet, the calves. It's all creating that sensation of this character is actually tilted completely towards us, and you know that it's coming toward the reader. Okay, now we're going to talk about comics. Again, like I told you, all this are principles. You can take them, use them in illustration, single illustrations. They can work if you want to tell a story with just one image, or you just want to draw a guy running. Again, you can apply them. Because we're talking about comics and because we're talking about storytelling, these principles apply, but they apply in the sense that they have to be used to tell a story. You want to tell people about this murder scene. You want to tell people about this little girl planting a garden. I don't know. But again, it's all in purpose to actually tell a story. So, here. These are again the two panels. This is the previous panels to the one where he shows up and the sun shows up in the distance. You can see here that I again play with elements. We have the foreground elements, the middle-ground element, and the background element. This is not as extreme because that's not the intention of this. I don't care about being, overly dramatic with this because his expression is what is supposed to be, the center of attention. This is supposed to be what you're looking at and what you're reacting to as a reader. So all my elements, even though I'm still playing with the foreground, middle-ground, and background, all the elements are just there to kind of frame his face. I could go with this hand maybe, and then creating or maybe an up shot or a down shot or like creating a different emotion, but you don't want to overuse all those kind of like not tricks, but all those resources. You don't want to You don't want to tell the story just in a more complex way, just for the sake of being complex. So I toned down the composition here a little bit and made you look at his face. It's just at his reaction. He is scared. He is stressed. You know that. The hand is basically cutting your flow of the reading right about here, straight here. So you stop here with the face. That's what I want you to do. What I want you to do next is actually go from this panel to this panel. So the hand is actually helping me because the hand is again pointing you in this direction. It all becomes to use all these elements to kind of, guide the reader. So you see the face is the thing that is being framed by basically everything right here. But you also have this direction implied by the hand. And then you get to this panel. What happens in this panel? You see where he is. Now I want to create that sensation of space. I want you to feel that you are there in that room that the character's in. What do? Again, I place a foreground element, kind of to relate to the reader. He knows where he is. He knows where he's looking at the scene from. I place the character basically right next, being framed by all of this. Like this element is actually framing this character by not making you look past this way because you have this stopping your view here. You have this straight wall here, over here. Another element. You have the arch. You have another vertical element here. Everything is basically framing this whole thing, the character right about here. Even I have this element in the background, kind of like just a piece of wood, just basically tilting this way, just to, again, your eyes are gonna just go here. Also, I reinforce everything with the color. Like this is the brightest thing, the highest point of contrast because it's like the brightest thing up against the darkest thing element. So you know what to look at. But again, I want you to know what you're supposed to be reading or looking at next. So what do? First of all, I slightly tilt the lighting to come from over here. You have these two cast shadows kind of directing your view to this part. You have that being dark, almost a barrier, this being light. This is the light at the end of the tunnel. This is where you want to go. This is where the character is looking at. This is where the next action is going to take place. And you already know what the next action is because I showed you. It's him coming here and seeing what's on the other side of this arc. Another example. Okay, again, here. What you also want to do, and granted, I'm obsessed with characters, or like drawing characters, but I'm trying to incorporate a little bit more of using your environment, using your props to actually create these effects, but you want to frame things. You really want to frame things. And here, in this composition, this panel, I actually use the two main characters that you're supposed to look at to see, to kind of frame this third character. Why? Not because this character is important, but what this character just did is important. He just went into this office to let this guy have this FBI folder that is given to this guy. So basically I created this two pillars just framing that third guy. Also in the inks at least, he is just this large black figure in the center of these two mostly white or lighter figures. So, and I use foreground element, thicker lines, really close to the reader. Then you see a hand retreating distance, but it's, again, just a hand. I'm just kind of creating that sensation of foreshortening. Then the folder, another plane, the hand of this guy, because you still kind of want to show every element at least a little, so you feel like everything is overlapping. And then you see the shoulder overlapping the arm, overlapping the folder, this hand overlapping the folder, but this folder is also overlapping this guy, the elbow and forearm, another element, bicep and deltoid, another element, torso and head, another element, another plane.